官。
早晨，好多謝大家今日嚟到我哋政府總部啦，我可以同大家講幾點我覺得係希望俾大家聽嘅。我今日大致係要講4點。第一咧就係前廳交流會咧，我哋同立法會大家溝通咗之後咧，聽日就會係第一次，係由我帶領3位司長、3位副司長同埋特首辦主任咧一齊去出席嘅。實際嘅安排咧係由立法會去決定。因為我喺立法會嘅答問大會裏邊咧，我都講我係建議咗呢一個前廳交流會嘅一個交流嘅常設機制啦，實際嘅運作我係會聽，應該交翻俾立法會去決定嘅。咁首先咧就照我理解，聽日嘅安排咧就係會喺9:03就開始。我哋亦都知道咧11點鐘咧就會係有大會開會嘅，所以係打算咧10:09我哋就會完結咗。咁有幾樣重點嘅，第一咧，前廳交流會咧係一個起點嚟嘅啫，因為咧我希望嘗試一個機制咧，等大家有一個互相認識、交流同埋跟進嘅機會。咁即係呢個起點之後咧，有好多發展或者延續嘅交流機會同埋活動咧，係會交翻俾有關嘅立法會議員以及我哋一啲司局長去跟進嘅。另外咧，前廳交流會咧，將我哋嘅交流咧係擴闊咗嘅，因為以往咧真正係常設嘅交流咧，就係由政務司司長同內委會主席同埋副主席咧，係一個星期就3位人士咧係開會去討論立法會嘅事務。今次前廳交流會咧就將呢個交流嘅範圍咧係擴大到所有司長、副司長同埋局長以及每個局嘅相關人士。另外咧就係呢個只係一個開始嚟嘅。之後咧前廳交流會點樣可以再發展進一步去優化不同嘅細節咧，我哋喺過程裏邊咧係可以好務實，咁以提升我哋嘅聯繫為目標咧，大家去不斷優化嘅。咁所以第一次嘅交流會咧，亦都係一個我以身作則，希望做到俾大家睇咧，我哋係認真，而且希望常設一個溝通嘅交流制度。第二點咧係同大家講咧，就係有關我哋4個工作組。我喺7月6號喺立法會講咗之後咧，喺7日內，即係話會聽日咧，今日啊，應該係今日，即係7日內，今日咧就會開第一次嘅會議㗎啦。咁呢個咧包括咗弱勢社群學生擺脫跨代貧窮嘅行動組、土地房屋供應統籌組、地區事項統籌工作組同埋公營房屋項目行動工作組4個組咧，今日都會開會㗎。咁我好高興咧，就喺7日內咧，佢哋已經展開第一次會議。咁我對於佢哋嘅積極性咧，我係滿意嘅。第3點咧就係行會今日開完會之後咧就會休會嘅。在復會嘅期間咧會另行公佈，但喺休會期間咧都會有不同嘅專題小組咧係會有內部嘅討論，同埋內部嘅專題小組去就某啲事情咧係自己去討論，兼且咧同有關嘅部門咧係會有啲研討嘅。而且咧係當有需要嘅時候咧，我都會召集行會嘅成員咧係翻嚟開特別會議嘅。另外第4點咧同大家講咧就係大家都關注嘅防疫抗疫工作。我哋而家嘅目的咧就係盡量將我哋因為防疫抗疫要做嘅啲規限咧，以精準嘅方法，將個規限盡量減到最低，從而將大部分嘅人士咧係第一不需要喺規範之下 去進行自己嘅活動，又或者因為規範而將佢被規限活動咧，某一啲係容許咗佢，包括點對點嘅一啲活動。咁由醫務及衛生局而家研究緊嘅紅碼咧，而家嘅範圍係窄嘅，個構思都係窄嘅，即係紅碼咧只係針對一啲確診人士，只係確診嘅人士係會有個紅碼。咁大家都知道確診嘅係唔應該再有活動去感染其他人。黃碼咧亦都係窄嘅，只係針對喺而家酒店集中隔離嘅人士，我哋係考慮緊點樣優化佢整個隔離嘅時段咧，而去推出一個黃碼去處理呢一類別嘅人嘅啫。所以喺嗰個組別咧，就只係針對呢兩組。咁我哋長遠嚟講咧，係要研究乜嘢咧？就係話，如果喺我哋過去第五波疫情，大家經歷過，曾經係可以係超負荷咁去推倒我哋不同嘅系統咧，我哋是否係有一啲更加快、精同埋準嘅方法去識別呢啲人士出嚟咧，從而咧係控制住嗰個確診數字上升。我哋而家係諗緊一啲係應對呢啲可能性嘅一啲措施嘅。我哋亦都喺考慮呢啲措施嘅時候咧，係考慮埋點樣將嗰個市民嘅不便咧減到最低。亦都係因為咁咧，識別方法咧係可以令到唔需要受限制，或者限制可以減少嘅人數咧，因為個識別嘅方式咧，導致咧受影響嘅人咧係減到最低嘅。我哋而家都係聽緊意見，亦都希望咧盡量將我哋一啲新嘅措施咧同現有嘅制度係接軌嘅。所以不同嘅意見我哋都聽，實際係我哋最終嘅措施會係點咧？我哋到我哋決定咗咧，都一定會話俾大家聽嘅。但係咧，好肯定話俾大家聽咧，現在去針對嘅紅碼同埋黃碼，就只是剛才我所講呢兩種類嘅人士，即係確診咗嘅紅碼喺酒店被檢疫嘅人士，佢係有黃碼，其他嘅人係不受影響嘅。大致上嘅情況。
跟住落嚟係提問嘅時間，咁請陣間要提問嘅記者舉手示意之外咧，嗌到你之後就介紹咗你係代表邊個傳媒機構先，亦都用我哋提供嘅咪去發問嘅。首先左手邊後排中間白衫女記者。
The lady in white。
你好，李生。我頭先想問下，即係政府推出紅黃碼啦，其實黃碼就希望縮短嗰個入境酒店檢疫嘅日數啦。其實早前有傳5+2一個酒店檢疫同埋一個家居健康監察嘅安排，會唔會再放寬啦？都有意見認為其實如果係推出咗之後，其實7日都唔需要有一個酒店檢疫啦。呢方面有冇得考慮咧？第二就係即係政府之前都講到就係推出安心出行嘅實名制同紅黃碼啦。雖然就係話只係限制咗兩個組別嘅人士啦，但係都有議員表明其實都擔心係成為咗疫情以外嘅一個政治工具啦。都有議員提到，其實喺內地都有出現就係有政府利用一個紅碼去限制咗啲銀行嘅存款用戶咧係自由出入嘅情況。覺得政府點樣可以說服到市民呢個紅黃碼咧，淨係得一個疫情嘅用途，冇其他嘅用途啦。最後就係今次即係政府係推呢啲政策出嚟之前，有冇問過專家啦？未來會唔會都委任翻專家嘅顧問咧？定係話直接由即係醫務衛生局局長落決定就可以咧？
剛才講紅黃綠碼，我亦都好清晰講啦。黃碼而家我哋係只係針對一類別嘅人，睇下嗰個真真正正嘅檢疫嗰個限制日數。我哋點樣可以係將嗰個日數去符合到我哋嘅數據，從而咧將個限制減到最少，去令到經濟活動又好，社會活動又好咧，以及我哋國際競爭力咧係可以保持嘅。呢個第一點啦。咁所以實際上我哋將嗰個日數係點樣有定案咧？我哋都係睇數據。咁呢個係醫衞局咧係好積極咁啊嚇。 去分析
The
緊數
Health
據，咁我
Bureau
相
is
信
very
應該
proactively
會
analyzing
盡
the
快我哋
relevant
將個新嘅
data.
考慮咧
I'm sure the new
係向大家公
considerations
佈嘅。
will be
第二
made
咧就
public
係
very
我哋
soon.
香港無論用任何方法咧去處理疫情
Regardless
咧，
of
一定係
the
符合法律
way
嘅。我
we
哋係一個非常
tackle
守法
the
嘅
epidemic, we will surely
地方，
be
政府
acting
就
in
必然要
accordance
守
with
法
the
添啦
law. Now
所以
we
咧
are a law-abiding
將
place. The
任何
government, of
措施
course,
用
will
喺
abide by the
非
law.
抗疫
Any
嘅範圍咧係唔會發生，
measures
亦
or
都不切實際。
meant
如
for
果任何
tackling
人咧
the
喺呢方面嘗試
epidemic
去
would not be used
製造
for
一啲
other
事端咧
purposes. It's not
我
going
可
to
以話俾
happen.
佢聽咧，
If anyone wants
絕對
to
唔
stir
係
trouble
事
with
實
this,
啊！
let
咁
me
大家亦
say
都唔
here
需要相信
categorically
喺我
that
哋
is not a
運用
fact.
任何措施，
It's not
如
true.
果
Don't
係唔
believe
符合
in
法律
such
嘅，
things.
第一政府唔會做。
Now,
第二咧
we will
一
not
定
go
會有
against
翻
the
效
law
果。
in
我同
applying
意
any
喺我哋
measure,
整體解
and
説嘅
there
工作
are
咧會
bound
做
to
好
be
嘅。呢
consequences.
方面
And
咧就
I'm
第
sure
一，
we
我
will
同
do a good
政
job
務
in
司司長咧
explaining
已經大家同
the
意嘅，喺整體
policy.
統籌同埋推出
I've
所有
agreed
嘅措施
with
咧，
the
我哋
Chief
都會係
Secretary for
好認
Administration
真
that
去
in
審核
launching
晒所有
any
範
new
圍涉及
measure,
嘅
we
問題，
will clearly
從而咧
consider
喺解説
all
同埋
the
解釋方面
scopes
咧係做
involved,
到位
and
嚇，
then
等大家
we
都知道
will
實
give
際
a
嘅
good
情況咧
account
只係
to
針
the
對疫情，
public so
只係
that
希望我
you
哋盡可能
understand
將
that
因為我
we're
哋抗疫
only
嘅措施所影響嘅人
focusing on
減
the
到最低。
epidemic and to
換言之，本來
minimize
5000人要
the
受限制
impacts
嘅，
on people
我希望
affected
減
by
到
the
1000人，
epidemic. For
其他
instance,
4000
there
人
may
咧
be
都可以
5,000
有
being
一啲
affected. Now we
例如我哋
want to
准許嘅點對點嘅活動，個目的就係
reduce
咁
the。number to
另外咧，
1,000.
專家顧問咧
And
係
then
我哋
we
會
will ensure
係
point-to-point
委派
or
嘅，
closed loop
而事實上咧
arrangement.
喺
And
我
for
仲
experts, we'll
係
continue to appoint experts.
當選咗未上任嘅時候咧，我已經
Even
係
when
同
I
專家
was
組咧有
the
過
CE
2次嘅接
elect,
觸，
I've
有一
had
次即係我
two
本人啦，另外一次咧就係我
meetings
加
with
埋
the
盧
expert
教授
group.
嘅，即係醫衞局局長嘅。
On one
咁啊，當時因為
occasion,
我哋未上
by
任
myself only
咧，
at the
就所以
second
我哋
together
係
with
有一個非
Dr.
正式嘅
Low,
溝通。
the
而我相信當時
Secretary
我
for
都
Health now,
應該發咗
because
新聞稿嘅。
we
我哋
had
係
not
當然
assumed
係
office back then.
聽專家意見嘅，亦
It
都
was
覺
an
得專家
informal
意見咧，
meeting,
特別
and
喺
then
數
we
據同埋
issued
科學
a
方面嘅
press
意見
release
係值得我哋
afterwards.
參考。
Now,
我哋好快咧亦都
views of
宣布
experts,
委任專家嘅
scientific
事。
data in particular, is
跟
very
住下一位提
good
問，
for
咁希望提
our
問嘅記者咧
reference,
就
and we
提
will
不多於兩條
announce
問題，因為
the
時間嘅關係嘅。
formation of
左
such
手邊
committee
男
very
士，
soon.
左
All
邊
right,
男士。
each can only ask 2 questions in the interest of time.
Good morning, Mr. Lee, Hong Kong Free Press. First, even with a shortened quarantine, do you think business people or tourists will visit, show vaccination proof, spend thousands on a hotel and undergo a dozen RAT tests or PCR tests to attend meetings or do business? Is it compatible with Xi Jinping's instruction to maintain Hong Kong's status when Singapore is already fully open? Also, you just warned against stirring trouble when it comes to the idea of the health code being used for political purposes. But of course, we've seen this in Hainan province, and the government has already, said a couple of years ago they would not enact a health code. So how can you reassure Hong Kongers and rebuild trust over enacting this policy?
Well, first of all, every government, of course, have to design their COVID control measures according to their own circumstances. We have our own circumstances because we have a high proportion of elderly people. Our living conditions are relatively very dense, which are all factors that point to the higher risk of spreading the COVID virus. That's the first thing. The second thing is, from our experience in the 5th wave of the COVID attack, we know that the safety margin that was set at that time probably would not be sufficient in view of the fast spreading rate of Omicron. So what we need to do now is to balance these two risks. We have to ensure that the life safety of people who are facing a high risk, such as the elderly, the very young, such as children, and also people who suffer from long-term diseases, in which case their resistance to disease attack is weakened, and also people who are exposed to high risk, such as people in the medical profession. So we have to balance the risk so that we do not have an escalating rate of infected persons that will, first of all, overwhelm our medical system, the hospital system, and secondly, the people who are facing high risk are sufficiently protected. So what we are trying to do is be scientific and precise in our actions so that on the one hand, we can protect people who face such high risks, and at the same time, allow people to come in and out of Hong Kong more easily and more conveniently. That is what we are doing. That is why we are trying to reduce the number of days that a person will have to be isolated in a hotel or quarantined in a hotel so that they can then go about their normal activities. It is a balancing act which is not easy, but has to be taken into consideration based on actual circumstances. That's the first thing. The second thing is the health code, which is being introduced, is only to target two types of people, and they are very specific and small number. First of all, the red code is intended to identify people who have been infected, and they should not be going around to spread the virus. And the second group is also very small and well defined, which are the people who are now being kept in a quarantine hotel. We introduce this yellow code for them so that when we design measures to allow them to have some limited activities so that business can continue in a much normal way, and we need some identification method. That is the whole purpose of the red and yellow code. And in the long run, I think we have to be realistic of what kind of risks we may be facing. First of all, we can see the figure escalating. Already now it averages at about 3,000. And the figures and the trend indicate that the figures will go up very quickly as well. And the hospitalization rate has already gone up at least by double, from 300 something to 900 something within 1.5 months. So we have to face this reality. That is why we are thinking of designing methods that will be able to allow us to react more quickly, to respond more precisely, and at the same time allow more people who don't have to be so restrictive in the activities so that normal business can go about and the economy can go about in a much relaxed way. That's the purpose of what we are doing. But of course we will listen to views, and we will also try to reduce the inconvenience to people, and also we'll make sure that we'll well explain the scope and the method so that people understand why we do it, what benefits they gain, and what are the concerns that they do not have to really bother, because there may be some misinformation which we need to address very quickly so that everybody knows what we are doing.
由於時間關係咧，我哋答多一位嘅提問嘅，
in the interest of
右
time, we
手
only
邊
allow
前
one
排
more
白衫最右手邊
question.
嘅。
The lady
係你
in
好，
the
香
front
港
row.
01。首先想問
Good
關於
morning,
防
I'm
疫
from
方面，可唔可以講
HK01.
下由上
On
屆
the
政府
question
成立
of
嘅
fighting
專
the
家顧問團，
epidemic,
而家
now
係仲有冇運
the
作緊
expert
嘅？
groups
因為上屆政府
set
有
up
講
by the
過話，
last
希
time
望
of
見多
government
更多
is
疫
still
情
in
嘅處理手
operation
法。而前特首亦
because
都講話希望
the
會就住呢
former
樣嘢去
chief
俾意見
executive
嘅，所以想
said
知道
that
現
she
屆
was
政府
willing
係
to
有冇呢個計
advise
劃。
on such
第二就
aspects.
係
So I'd
留意
like
到
to
特
know
首
whether
上任之
you
後加
intend
強
to
咗網
continue the
上嘅宣傳工
operation
作，
for the
多分
committee.
享自己
Now,
嘅
since
生
you
活同埋
assumed
工作點
office,
滴。
you have
我
stepped
就
up
想問你認為咁樣做係咪可以
publicity
修補到
through
社會
the
累積落嚟嘅
internet,
撕裂，
and you
定
share
係嚟
with
緊
us
會
your
做啲
daily
乜
lives.
嘢
Do
去
you
特別
believe
增
this
強
will
市民，
help
尤其是年
in
輕人對你
amending
嘅信
rifts
心？
in
唔該。
society, and what you will do to boost the confidence of young people in this
剛才我都
government?
答咗啊，就專家顧問組咧，我哋係會好快咧就再委任嘅。事實上喺我仲係後任嘅期間，我已經係同專家組咧係見過2次，一次就係我本人，一次係同埋盧教授嘅。我哋都係有好認真嘅交流，大家特別喺科學嘅論述同埋觀點咧，都係有充分交流。而將來咧，我哋都會去同專家聽佢嘅意見咧， 係去作出我哋任何防疫抗疫嘅決定嘅，所以呢個係會做㗎啦。另外一樣嘢咧就係我係認為任何人如果更加了解政府嘅運作，或者我本人呢個行政長官佢係佢嘅性格係點啊，或者我嘅個人一啲對事物嘅睇法係點啊，通過溝通咧係大家了解咧係會增進認識，咁樣係會第日喺任何溝通嘅領域方面都有幫助嘅。咁當然除咗喺社交媒體裏邊作溝通咧，我都講咗我係會去接觸不同界別嘅人士嘅，亦都喺10月嘅施政報告嘅工作裏邊，其中要準備嘅咧，都係聽不同人士意見，對於施政報告有咩諗法。咁所以喺整個過程裏邊咧，我又好，司長又好，局長又好咧，都會接觸不同嘅人士去聽意見嘅。咁大家咧都可以喺個過程裏邊咧睇到我哋係同邊啲人士會有邊類型嘅溝通，同埋喺過程裏邊咧係大家係點樣接觸嘅。好，多謝大家，
多謝晒大家。
Thank you.